The Cinematic Shuffle has shuffled once again. If you were around last week, either on my Twitter handle, Threads handle, or as a YouTube short, you would have seen me give off my 3 hints for what this film was going to be. And those hints were that it was an adaptation, it was a fantasy romance, and the initials of the director were N.E. I don't think any of you got it, but Jacob Martin, you guessed Mortal Instruments, City of Bones, which that's not a terrible guess, but my hints technically weren't all that great either. The director's not really all that well known other than a few romantic comedies out there, and the fantasy romance bit, I think that threw everybody off. I still stand by the fact that this is indeed a fantasy romance because half the plot does involve witches and magic and everything, but it's certainly not traditional in that fantasy genre. That being said, the film in question is indeed Bewitched. Let's get cracking. Bewitched is a 2005 comedy starring Will Ferrell as an actor trying to revitalize his career by remaking the beloved Bewitched sitcom from the 60s. His hope is to cast an unknown as the lead witch, which is where he comes across the lovely Isabel, played by Nicole Kidman, who he finds perfect for the role. Turns out she is perfect though. Much more perfect than he ever thought because she's actually a real witch, and his actual life turns out to be a little bit of a remake itself of the show, on top of the fact that they're actually remaking the show. I remember when this came out to theater, and for whatever reason, I really remember enjoying it, going as far as buying it on DVD when I got the chance. I think back in 2005, I was a junior in high school, and that was roughly around the same time where I was a much bigger fan of Will Ferrell's career than I am now. So everything that he did, I was a big fan of. Now, there was 1 or 2 movies out there that were arguably trash, but back then I was like, it's okay, it's just not my thing. No, young Dave, no. The movie is trash. You can say that it's trash, it's okay. But Bewitched, I wouldn't say that it's a bad movie. It's not, it just isn't as good as I remember it being either. I think that it's interesting coming from the perspective that this isn't what you typically come to find out of Will Ferrell or Nicole Kidman, so that's kind of cool. And there's at least 2 moments in this film that made me laugh a lot. There's this moment where Nicole Kidman's character has had just enough of Will Ferrell's character and she decides to prank him with just a load of magic. That was good, that was funny. Also, towards the end of the film, there's a cameo with Steve Carell. That also made me chuckle quite a bit, but a majority of the jokes didn't quite land for me in Bewitched. What's worse is the fact that I didn't really feel the chemistry between the 2 leads here, and there's truly nothing worse in film when you don't feel the magic in the air with romance, especially if there's literally magic in the plot of the film. Now, part of the issue is the fact that there's a lot of weirdness that I feel with the movie. What I mean by that is, it's in the casting, right? I thought that Nicole Kidman was cast perfectly. There was nobody else that I could picture in that role but her. Meanwhile, I thought that Will Ferrell was completely and entirely miscast, and it should have been somebody like Jim Carrey, who naturally looks like the actor who played Darren anyway. But here's where weirdness comes into play. Even though I thought Nicole Kidman felt perfectly cast, I also thought that she was trying way too hard to amp up the floofy acting you'd normally see in 60s sitcoms that really feel weird to watch and unnatural to watch in modern times. And while I thought that Will Ferrell was miscast, I also thought that he did a fine job in the movie. It's like it's backwards day or something. Now, the idea scene in the movie isn't bad. I like the concept here, and I like the mirroring going on thematically in terms of, the real world ironically reflecting the events of their made-up sitcom. I thought that that was great if they just kind of focused on that just a little bit more, especially earlier on in the film. It would have been a tad bit more successful and quite a bit funnier too. Unfortunately, I think that most people that watch this movie, even the people that think parts here and there are funny, just won't think that it was worth it at the end of the day. For me, I do think that it's worth the watch, but instead of it being a purchase like what I did back in the day, I would say it's much more of a rental than anything else, and a cheap rental at that. Like if you have a daily sales and rental on something like, oh, today's 99-cent day on iTunes or on Prime or something, that's when you get to rent this movie. Just don't spend more than $1, that's all I'm saying. At the end of the day, I did rate Bewitched a C+ letter grade, final overall score of 69%, 69 out of 100 possible stars. I think that a lot of the jokes fell flat, unfortunately, and where they could have made a few risks, they decided instead to remain in a safe little bubble. That bubble allowed for a couple of funny jokes to weasel their way in pretty well, but it also had problems in other areas like chemistry. There's just no chemistry between the two leads here, and when you're in the romance genre of any kind, that's always going to be a major issue. But what did you guys think about Bewitched? Did you guys watch the original show back in the 60s? And if so, how do you think that this compares to that? And as for YouTube, you guys know what to do. Hit the like, subscribe button, and bell to be notified when I come out with my next installment for the Cinematic Shuffle. And until then, peace out.